friends. I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I am just delighted to introduce Tony and Sue Morris of Worldwide Marriage Encounter to you today. These volunteers oversee more than 1,600 couples and priests in North America who conduct marriage encounter weekends and lead follow-up support groups. In fact, these marriage encounter support groups exist in virtually every Catholic diocese in the United States and Canada. Overall, more than 3.5 million couples have been reached since Marriage Encounters beginning in 1968, which predates Sue and Tony. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You're so welcome.
Oh, well, this is Worldwide Marriage Encounter is the oldest and most popular marriage enrichment program in the world, which is just astounding and wonderful to get to talk about. It's kind of gold standard. Can you talk about a little bit of its history? Because a lot of our marriage champions may not know this.
Yeah, absolutely. So Worldwide Marriage Encounter has its roots that go all the way back to Spain, a Father Calvo, who was doing a family retreat in Spain. And one of the priests that had attended that, Father Chuck Gallagher, was from the New York area. And he came back from that retreat and was really moved by what he saw with a program that was strictly for couples. There had been programs for men and programs for women, but there really wasn't a married couple program. So he got together with 3 other couples and they sat around a kitchen table and they talked and they roughed out an outline and put it together. And they presented the first Worldwide Marriage Encounter weekend in the New York area in 1968.
Wow. And then it kind of started spreading, right?
Absolutely.
It did. The early people who attended the weekend experiences were kind of like missionaries. They left where they lived and went across the country to present weekends because it was so important to them to enrich marriages.
Yeah. Which is just wonderful. And as we joked, it definitely predates you, even though you guys have been leaders and part of this for quite some time. Can you tell us about your journey?
Well, we were asked by friends to attend a weekend in the early 90s. And we made excuses, like many do, that we were too busy. Our marriage was good. We didn't think we needed to go.
Didn't want to leave the kids.
Didn't want to leave the kids.
You only were raising 4 children, right? So
didn't want to miss any sporting events or any of that kind of stuff. And finally, we ran out of excuses and were somewhat bribed to go. And in February of 1995, we went on our weekend and were asked to help with presenting, and the rest is kind of history. We've not said no very many times when we were asked to help out to do something in the ministry.
But the experience we had on that weekend experience, we call them experiences now because they're not necessarily on a weekend. The majority of them still are on weekends, but for us, it was one of those, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
We didn't realize how not far apart we had grown, but how much we had got into a routine, and we lost some of that magic from our early days of dating and even the early days of our marriage, where we could just sit and talk for hours about each other and dreams and things along those lines. And we just lost some of that intimacy. And we walked away from that weekend literally floating on clouds. And it was just life-changing for us in that way, that how important it was for our relationship to be good in order for our family relationship to be good.
Well, I know, Sue, you had mentioned, Tony, you just said life-changing. Sue, you had mentioned that too, and that you really found that connection again. Can you tell us, and again, because you guys do this as volunteers, you both had full-time jobs at the time with 4 kids, and Sue, you're a physical therapist, and Tony, you're still working, you're still leading a company.
Yep, a division of a company.
And almost 2 years ago, I retired now, but for the majority of the time that we've been involved, I did work as a physical therapist and chased kids around and, was the taxi driver and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the reality of our movement is that a majority of our couples and priests, the priests obviously have full-time ministry work that they do, but they give their times to this ministry. Most of the couples are either both employed or one employed, and it's all volunteers. We have 2 paid positions in Worldwide Marriage Encounter in the entire North America that are employees right now. So it's one of those ministries that you're called to. And if you say yes to it, you're going to make some sacrifices, but the sacrifices are just so important to continuing to strengthen marriages.
Yeah. So can you explain to our marriage champions exactly what your volunteer position is now? Because it's one you rotated into, and then you'll rotate out. But it's really interesting to think how this all comes together.
So since July of 2022, our position has been a part of the North American ecclesial team. So we serve with Bishop Mike Warfel, who is out of Billings, Montana. Emeritus Bishop Michael Warfel. So he serves with us, and our territory or our responsibility is to help out in all of North America, including the Caribbean, and 8 countries in the Caribbean and down there, and Canada. So the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean.
Yeah. One of the beauties of our ministry is in the various roles that are there. You're selected through a prayerful process into these roles for people that are open for it. It's a very spirit-driven process, and you're only allowed to be in them for a certain period of time. So while there's difficult times in any role that you're in of leadership, there are more joyful times in that, but there's an end to it. It's not like you're in it forever, right? So.
And you've gotten to do some really interesting things. You've gone around the world, and where are some of the places that you've gone?
Yeah, so serving in this role, we meet with the World Council. So the North American Secretariat is one of 6 secretariats that exist, including Latin America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. So there is a couple like us and a priest like Bishop Mike that represent those countries, and on an annual basis we meet in person. And 2 years ago we met in Indonesia, Surabaya, Indonesia. That was our first meeting, and we meet virtually in between those meetings. But then last year we met in Mauritius, Africa. To talk about just what's going on in the movement worldwide and what changes we need to make in our ministry to still be relevant to couples and priests and families in today's world.
Yeah. And I know you had mentioned some things are different and some things are very much the same.
They are. Everybody's ultimate goal is to strengthen marriages. Every part of the world has their own challenges, with some of it is distance. Like in Africa, there's a very large distance between communities. And in some ways, those leaders have not been able to get to all the different parts of their country. But they sit with the technology that's available now. People can meet with couples from around their continents and share. So we're fortunate in North America that we have the ability to get to see a lot of those that we journey with.
But to your point, the cultural differences are there, right, in each of these countries, but the struggles and challenges that families still face, married couples, whether they're both working or one working. Some of these countries have poor economies, and some of these countries there's wars going on. That's just a part of their lives. So there's still that need to help them stay strong so that they can get through those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I want to talk about the content and how you address some of those things. But I think one of the questions that I had and that the marriage champions might have is, you said it's with Bishop Mike. Why a priest?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we represent the Catholic movement of Worldwide Marriage Encounter. There are 6 or 7, can't remember the number. We actually just talked with them earlier this week. Other faith expressions that use our outline as well, Methodists and Lutherans and a lot. So, but in our movement, the priest represents the parish family, if you will.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the parish family, the priest is a man who some people look at him as like, well, he's in charge. Well, he's just a guy, and he still has the need for relationships and to be able to sit down and talk intimately with other people in the parish. We see that as almost a mirror of our marriage relationship. He's giving his life to the parish, and the parish is there to support him. Yeah. So it's very important for our priests to be able to be open and expressing themselves honestly. When things are bad, they need to be able to talk about things are bad, not just stand up there and pretend they aren't.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're talking about expressing openly and sharing feelings, because that's one of the characteristics, right? That when someone goes to the Worldwide Marriage Encounter experience, they are not sharing there's not the group. It's between the husband and the wife. So talk about the curriculum. Talk about what a husband and wife would do on one of these experiences.
In the beginning, it's it kind of builds on, each presentation builds on the previous. And in the beginning, you learn to encounter yourself, to learn who you are. And by knowing who you are, then it's easier to share yourself with your spouse. And then we teach getting in touch with your feelings, and in this world, a lot of people stuff their feelings. They don't want people to know that they feel good or bad or happy or sad, because
or don't have the time,
or don't have time for them,
or at least think they do.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And so by knowing that your feelings are neither right nor wrong, we teach that concept so that then people can go a little bit further and see how they do with those feelings, because the feelings may not be right or wrong, but what you do with the feelings are. So I could be angry at something that happened in my day, and I could take it out on Tony in the evening. If I'm mad that somebody cut me off in traffic, and I had to slam on my brakes, and the guy behind me flipped me off as he went by because I made him stop. And I come home and I'm mad about that, and I slam the door, and Tony thinks, "Ooh, I'm mad." What did I ever do? Where if I share what happened with him when I come home, then he knows, I might be acting a little short because of something that happened in my day, not necessarily something that he did.
Yeah. So as the weekend progresses, we teach them that first thing about sharing a feeling, because feelings, as Sue said, are neither right nor wrong. So it gives them a safe thing to talk about.
Yeah.
We still have things after 43 years that we don't agree on, and we still get into arguments, and we still tiffs. But when we're talking, when we share our feelings, and we do it on a daily basis in our letters that we write to each other, then it gives us that safe space because it's a gift that I'll give to nobody else. And her letter to me is a gift that she'll give to nobody else. And so that 10 minutes that we have to do that is just critical to our continue to be a strong couple.
Tell me about this letter, because I thought that the letter writing was just an exercise at the marriage encounter experience, but this is something ongoing you do?
Yeah,
It's a skill you learned?
absolutely.
Mhm.
So on the experience, we have people write. We actually have them separate to write so that as we ask them questions that get a little bit more deeper into their relationship, as we work through these presentations, we'll get into some touchy areas that they may not ever talk about, in some cases. But by writing the letter and knowing that they're focusing on the feeling, not what's right or wrong about the question, then they can have that conversation and get a better understanding. Like if I get frustrated by finances when I know there's not enough money at the end of the month, I can be frustrated with that, but I don't want to take it out on Sue because I spend money too. But if she understands it's frustrating to me, she may share with me about what her feelings about it are, so we can talk about that in a little bit better context.
Yeah.
If we just stopped after the weekend, then we go back to our old ways.
Yeah.
So since our weekend, we have chose a question and we have written a love letter, as we call it, to each other about a topic. And some of them are kind of deep topics like we talk about on the weekend, but some of them are just really fun topics. Like yesterday, we wrote on a letter of how did I get my name and how do I feel about that?
Huh.
Do I know why my parents chose my name?
How did you come up with that?
Well, the beauty of this is again, because of this ministry, there are people that will post questions on Facebook. We actually have a dialogue question of the day that we have a group that puts together, and we send it out to support the couples that are in our communities that are out there that are post weekend or post worldwide marriage encounter experience people. And it's that ongoing support that is so important. And there's other ministries that do this, but that's one of the things that makes us unique is after that 44-hour experience is done, we just don't say good luck.
Yeah.
We offer them the ability for ongoing community support that is in various communities geographically or virtually online throughout North America and really throughout the world.
I love that. So that, because I'm glad you highlighted that. So after their experience, you connect them with a group, and maybe you could go into that a little bit more in depth. That I don't think I realized that they could get a question to write down to discuss daily. I was on your website and I saw a question, but I somehow that didn't click with me that that's something that the couples then could continue and are encouraged to continue indefinitely.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the support groups? Because after the encounter, how they were plugged back in?
Yep. So after the weekend, there are, like Tony said, some of them are geographically based, in your parishes. Some of them are just, a 15, 20-minute drive. Some people choose to drive further than that for their meetings, but it's a group of couples who have attended a worldwide marriage encounter experience, see a value in marriage, and support each other. And one of the things that we found out over the years is that you might think that something that's going on in your house is just going on in your house, that it never could happen in someone else's house. And each whether the communities meet by every other week or monthly, someone does a presentation short, that just talks about something that happened and their thoughts and feelings on that. And then they give you a question at the end. So everybody at that community meeting writes a love letter to their spouse, which they share. And then they have a voluntary sharing at the end if you want to share with the group your feelings. And then after that, there's some social time where people gather and just enjoy each other's company and enjoy being married and
talk about how they can support our mission in some cases, because our mission is all self-supported by volunteers, and even couples that aren't, we talk about 1,600 couples that are and priests that are doing the presentations and trainings and things along those lines. There are probably 15 to 20,000 couples in these communities across North America that are inviting other couples to the weekend, and someone's showing up for the weekend, and they show up and they help drag bags and carry them into the hotel just to support the movement in whatever way they can doing that.
Or invite people like your friends did when you brokered a trade that if they'd handle part of the church picnic, you'd work it out for all those years ago and finagled you guys into it. And then little did you know the benefit of that.
Yep.
That's right.
Absolutely.
You talked too about in the experience, some of the things that are people encouraged to talk and share feelings about, and some things that people might not want to talk about. You actually talk about death. Could you explain how that can be a catalyst to bring couples closer? Because who wants to talk about that? But
yeah. So as we said, the weekend kind of gets into more and more depth as you go through. The first part of it is just kind of like, I almost relate it to a weekend boot camp, right? When you get there, we're going to have you just walk around the track a couple of times, and then as you go through, it's like, okay, well, you need to pick it up a little bit now, or we're going to go do some push-ups now, or whatever the case may be. But what we find is in relationships, there are some subjects that are just not talked about in a healthy manner, if they're talked about at all. And the traditional ones we see are money, sex, and death. And it's not very common that someone talks about death unless there's a death that happens in the family or someone they know dies, and then it's a shock. So we actually explore that on the weekend and talk about the importance of understanding that nobody is promised tomorrow. Yeah. Good health, bad health, whatever the case may be, there could be a tragic car accident, which has happened several times. And how important it is for us, at least, to know that, for me to know how much Sue loves me, and for Sue to know how much I love her, if this should be our last day. And when we put that into that context and share on that a little bit, it also helps people all of a sudden look at things and say, well, maybe making every single kid's game isn't that important. Maybe I should take some time while that's happening, because the friends can take the kids tonight and we're going to go out. We're going to have a nice date night on our own. And that may just be a cup of coffee someplace during the game and just talk. Yeah. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's just the importance of taking that time. So, and then we dig into other topics as well. And then again, give them some ongoing support, some questions to help them continue to do that.
Yeah. You told me a story about a couple that was really struggling. And of course, we're not going to mention any names, but you kind of evoked that we're not promised tomorrow. What if, talk about how you kind of help that couple get back on track with that example.
Well, they were supposed to be at the community gathering that we were at.
You're talking about the one on the weekend.
Oh, the weekend one, that one. So we were presenting on a weekend, and at the beginning of the weekend, we tell everybody that we are not marriage counselors and stuff, but we are there to help them if they have questions. And it's difficult to get in touch with your feelings when it's not something that you're used to doing.
Sure.
So we were at a little break, and the husband knocked on our door and he said, "Can you guys come to our room?" He said, "We're really struggling with this whole concept." So we went, followed him to their room, and he says, well, she's just not sharing her feelings, and he's not sharing. We heard the whole story. He's not doing it right. She's not doing it right. And we just don't know if this is right for us. And
so in the middle of that, we're like, I'm looking at my watch and knowing we have to be back in the presentation room in 5 minutes for the next presentation. And again, this is not something that we would, I would think a marriage counselor would do. Maybe they would, but it just kind of struck me, knowing what was coming a little bit later. It's to say, look, I elected him and said, just one question for you. If your wife was walking out in the street and turned to say something to you, and you saw that she wasn't seeing a bus that was coming, would you run out in front of that bus and push her out of the way? He said, yeah, absolutely. And I looked at her and said, and after he did that, if he was coming and to get out of the way too, and he tripped and fell, would you go out there and pull him? She said, well, yes, I would. Of course I would. I said, well, if you would do that, why don't you just continue to work at this for the next 24 hours to get through this and see if it can help him? And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But if it does, it does. And we just left.
Yeah.
We didn't know if they were even going to show up in the next presentation.
And they did. And they, Sunday at the end of the weekend, in our expression, in the Catholic expression, we end with Mass. And at the end of the Mass, everybody was coming in and cleaning up and picking up, and the people that were watching their children were helping pick up. So they came up to us, and he was holding his little girl, and he said, I want you to meet Tony and Sue. And so we said hi to her, and she said, they talked mommy and daddy into staying yesterday. And because they did that, you're going to have a mommy and a daddy who live together. And it still gives me goosebumps, to think that, we just encourage them to put their relationship first and stay the course. And the result that it had was that their family was going to be together. So.
Yeah. I mean, that I would imagine that makes all the hard work, all the time, all the effort worthwhile.
Yep.
Yeah. And I asked you something too. I asked you why. I think that why you give this time, why you do this. I think that was a great reason. Anything else you'd like to share about why this resonates so much with you?
Yeah. So Sue and I come from different backgrounds. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. And my sister and I stayed with my mom, and it wasn't the nicest of situations between them. But the good news is both of them found another significant other and spent many, many years with them. I think my stepdad and my mom were married for 35 years before my stepdad died, and my dad and stepmom were married 50 years before he passed away. But when we were asked to help do this, I first did it selfishly, because I always knew that if you're going to teach something, you have to practice it. You learn it better. So there was some selfishness that I wanted to do it to keep what we had found that weekend there. But what's gotten me through this 43 years is that I absolutely think this is the best work that Sue and I can do together to help strengthen a marital relationship. And if we can do that, it helps strengthen the family. And if the family's strong, the church is strong. And I believe that if we believe that the church is strong, our country is strong. So that's my why.
And for me, my why is kind of the pay it forward mentality. The gift that we received by those three couples and a priest who presented our weekend, and like Tony shared before, changed our lives. It changed our focus. We knew that we were the most important, that we should put each other first, right after God. And I wanted to be able to participate to have the weekend experiences or something like it, enrichments for couples, to be around for our kids and our grandkids and other people's children moving forward. So that's my kind of why.
Yeah. And it keeps you going. And we all, there's so many have benefited from it and will continue. So thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Oh. And Marriage Champions, if you would like more information about Worldwide Marriage Encounter and Sue and Tony, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org.